Hello and welcome to session 2 of my tutorial videos for UDK, and this time we'll be hopping into Substance Designer. Now during class session I've gone over the interface, the user interface of the program, so I think there's a fair understanding on how all that works. So I'm just going to go over our brick example like I did because, as I said, I still think that using a brick wall is a perfect example of using a texture or creating a texture from scratch in Substance Designer, and we'll use the most tools and widgets in the example. Alright, so to start off, Substance Designer comes with a bunch of noises and patterns which you can build your materials in using the program from scratch. So before in the class session I created a brick wall, so I'll be doing this again like I said, and it's as easy as picking a pattern from here, clicking, dragging, and dropping. Now as you'll see, I'll have three channels: diffuse, which prints out the image. So if I plug this in here, we'll have our diffuse show our picture. The normal determines the bumpiness or the texture of the surface itself, so the grout would be more inward and the brick would be more outward, so it gives that three-dimensional look even though the texture itself is only two-dimensional. And lastly, the specular determines how shiny and or how dull parts of your texture are, which is determined by black and white. White meaning that that's the most shiniest part of the surface, and black meaning that it's the most dull part of the surface. So now that I have my brick texture here, I need to be able to change it so that it looks more like a brick wall, because right now it just looks like a black T. So to do this, if I click on my node and hit the space bar, I'm given this list of options here in which I can manipulate this texture even further. So what I want to do is a 2D transformation node, and a 2D transformation mode enables me to do a various number of scaling and rotations, as well as multiplying or dividing the size of the image. And I can do this by either going from this panel here, this little window, and I can sort of rotate the image and stretch it out and things of that nature, as you can see over here, and you will immediately see what I'm doing to this image here. I could also uniformly scale things by using the parameters window here, in which if I divide by 2 I shrink down, and if I multiply by 2 I zoom in. So these are some very useful tools you'll probably be using to help scale your textures. So since I've jumbled this all up, I'm going to recreate this again and plug this back in. Now you can move the graph window by holding down the middle mouse button and moving around. Alright, and holding the left mouse button down creates a marquee box. Right-clicking doesn't move anything around, but it brings up your properties window. So if you are wondering how to move this window around, just hold down your middle mouse button and drag away. So here I'm going to divide by 2 times, and you can see if you want to refresh what you're looking at, if you double-click this, your texture will refresh here, as well as in real-time display over here in your 3D view. Next, what I want to do is, now that I have my brick wall, I need to change the color of the brick to red, but unfortunately my texture is by default a grayscale, so I must first convert this texture into a color node. And to do that, if I hit the space bar here, the gradient map is a great tool to convert anything from a grayscale to a color, which is indicated by an orange node. So now I need to apply my color, and if I click anywhere on my graph and select Uniform Color. Uniform Color is the perfect tool to define a color for the texture that I'm working with. You can use this color swatch here. You could also manually change the color values here in numeric values, or you can click this square here, which brings up the color editor window. So once again, I'm going to be choosing a color that befits using the using a brick color red. So I'm going to select a nice brick color red color. I would say somewhere around there. And now that I've used my uniform color to give it the specified color I want, I now need to blend the two materials together so that they form one material. And to do this, if I once again click the spacebar to bring up my nodes menu, I'm going to select blend. And what the blend tool does is it can combine two textures or two nodes to create one node. And as you can see, when I blended these two nodes, I've placed, it's sort of like having two sheets of paper. We have our original texture, which is at the bottom, and we've now placed a red piece of paper on the top. So now we need to merge the two pieces of paper together to create one sheet of paper. And the way we can do that is by going into our blending mode here. We just click on the drag down menu and select multiply. And immediately you will see the effects of the multiplication and the blend between the gradient map and the uniform color to create our brick texture. Now, of course, if we were making a level that's art style is cartoonish, this would suffice. But unfortunately, we would need to put a little more effort into our texture here, as the level of detail needed for our texture is much higher. So now you'll notice, which is another good example for this brick, that we have the black lines within our brick here, and we need to give those black lines color because usually cement or grout, which is used to paste brick together, is usually gray. So I'm going to place my brick texture here. Alternatively, I could just copy paste this one, but I'm going to select some adjustments here, and I'm going to invert the colors that are being used here. So I'm going to plug this guy in, and you'll see that it automatically changes this node here with a plugin for gradient. Is basically what this is, because this is black and white, and this, in order for this to work, needs to be in color, so it automatically does this. And then I'm going to create another transformation 2D, because once again our texture is just but a T, so we need to zoom out twice to make our brick wall. And now we're back at the first step where we were here, in which we will need to create another uniform color. So I click spacebar, select uniform color. I'm going to click on my square here, which brings up my color editor, and I'm going to select a nice dark gray color and say I'm happy with this. Great. So now I'm going to blend the two nodes again, similarly how I did this. So I'm going to hit spacebar, blend, and then I'm going to plug in my uniform color into this top part here, and make sure that my blending mode is multiplying. And when we double click here, you'll notice that the grouting is now gray. So now that I have my red bricks and now that I have my gray grouting, I once again need to use a blending tool to combine these two textures together. So I'm going to move these guys a little bit to the right here, say something like this, just to make my graph look pretty. And I'm going to click on my original texture here, and I'm going to blend, and the one we're blending is the one on the top. Now here's the particular case when we're using textures in Substance Designer. what Substance Designer recognizes is the white part and leaves out the black. So if I were to multiply the white parts of this one with the white parts of this one, I would get a solid black texture, which would be incorrect. And as you can see, our white is being multiplied with the black, and it's causing this to occur. So instead of multiplying the two to combine in terms of one texture, we're going to take a piece of this texture and combine it with a piece of this texture. And the way to do that is, instead of multiplying, we're going to add a linear dodge, which then gives us the gray grouting along with the red brick here. And there we have accomplished our brick wall. But now we need to give our brick wall a little more texture, because although we've solved the black line problem, it still looks cartoony. So to give ourselves a little more texture to the brick, I'm going to select, I suppose, black and white spots. And then I'm going to move these to the side here to make the workspace much easier to work with. And by default, this is a gray scale, and usually dirt isn't gray. So since we want to put some dirt on our wall, we need to convert the dirt from gray to a color scale and give it a dirt color. So to do this, I'm going to press space, and I'm going to select gradient map. Now this converts our gray scale to color, and if I go into the gradient here and click it, I'll see that I can manipulate the colors of the swatches here and add swatches as I click, or take them away by clicking and dragging away. But what we need to do is give these guys some color, so I'm going to open up the gradient editor, which will pop up this window. I'm going to select one end of the spectrum here and select an orange color, because orange is closest to brown, and I'm going to select a dark brown color. And on the opposite spectrum, I'm going to go into the orange area again, but choose a brighter brown color, one that will give the features of dirt. Let's see here. Let's say we're happy with that. So if I double click this, you can see that the colors I've chosen have given us a brownish dirt color, which is what we want. So now I need to blend this dirt with our brick wall. So to do this, I hit spacebar, bring up the blend tool, and then blend in my dirt with my wall, which will again place the two sheets of paper on one another, so we'll need to multiply this. And now both our brick and our dirt are now one texture. But our dirt texture seems a little bit too strong. So if I go into my blend tool here, the one that multiplies the brick with the dirt, if I go into my opacity for this tool and reduce it, I can take the dirt material away. But in this case, I just want to reduce the amount of opacity on it so that our wall isn't too heavily dirty like this, but bring in a little more balance so that we can have just the right amount of roughness on our wall. And as you can see, our wall is looking a little more balanced. So we are happy with that. And now I'm going to start working on giving this wall some actual bumps into its texture so that it doesn't feel so flat like a piece of paper. And so from here I'm going to start working with our normals. Normals are just images that tell the computer, according to the way the color of the texture is, what are the high points of it and what are the low points of it. And the computer can automatically process this information by simply using a normal node. But we don't want to use a normal node just yet because there's a little bit of more detail we want to put towards our brick, but I'll keep this floating here anyway. First, we're looking at our texture here, and the edges are way too hard for our grouting. this will give the brick an unnatural look. So another tool I'm going to show you is the blur tool. And the blur tool sort of, well, blurs. And you can change the intensity here. 0 meaning no blur at all, and 100% meaning totally blurred. But we want to find a nice little happy medium, and I'm liking the way this looks like. So from here we can change into a normal, and our normal, as you can see, is here. So any part that is purple, it will be lifted up towards you, and any part that is clear will stay in its current position or go inside. So now that we have our normal map, once again I'm going to give it the proper dimensions of our wall, which is to zoom out twice. And now we have our brick looking wall, and from here we can plug in our normal. And as you can see, immediately you can see the difference, especially if you move the light around, the effect that a normal map has. So as you can see, the grouting is now more defined and it looks more sunk in. But unfortunately, we also need to give the brick the roughness. So now that our bricks are sticking out, our bricks are still sort of flat. So we need to give our dirt a normal. So I'm going to create a new normal map. I'm going to drag this down here. I'm going to plug this in, and now we have a normal for our dirt. Right? So I'm going to change the intensity on this a little bit. Going to raise it up to about 2 points there. But now I have a problem. I have this normal and I have this normal, but my node can only take one normal at a time. This is where we start using a normal combine, which is found in the filters in your library. So if I go into normal maps, I just look for the option for a normal combine, drag and drop that in there, and if I take these two normals and plug it into this node and double click, you'll notice that the two textures are combined and we have the roughness of our dirt, but we also have the brick grouting of our original normal map. And if I increase the intensity of this normal map, you can see that I'm making the grouting more profound, which is what I want, because I don't want it to look like a flat piece of paper. I need it to be able to distinguish the bricks. So I'm going to leave it at 3. 3 looks fine. And when I plug it into the normal, you'll automatically see that our brick has that roughness. But of course, the roughness of the dirt is a little bit too much. So I'm going to go double click on my dirt and reduce the intensity on the dirt alone. And you'll see that the brick still has the roughness, but the grouting is more defined. So our brick texture is working as intended. Alright, so that's how normal maps work. Lastly, I'm going to work with our specular, which determines the glossiness or the shiny of a texture. Now the way Substance Designer calculates this is through the values of the colors black and white. So once again, we'll have to take our brick pattern here. We'll have to change it into a 2D so that it creates our brick wall. And then we'll have to change it to black and white. And the best way to do this is through an option called levels. So if I hit the space bar, which brings up my nodes, I'm going to select levels. And over here in our luminance channel, if I move this to the far bottom, you'll start seeing how this is affecting the face of the brick. So this this little swatch thing that I'm going up and down determines the color of the brick, this white one here, while this black one determines the color of the grout. So I'm going to raise this so that the grout has a little bit going in there, and I'm going to reduce the size or reduce the whiteness of the brick facing so that it's close to here, and then I'm going to test that out. And as I can see, if I move this to the max, I have to plug in the texture to see the immediate effect. So if I move this down over here, you'll see I'm taking away the shininess. Moving this down like this. As you can see, our brick has that little tiny shine to it. Perhaps that's a little too much, so let me just adjust it a little further. And there we go. Let's say I'm happy with this, and our brick has that nice little fresh brick sheen to it. Alright, so now that we have all that stuff, our brick texture is essentially done, and we can immediately import this into UDK. But in my class, I gave an example in which I added some graffiti to the wall, so I suppose I'll do that really quick. So I'm going to right click onto my packages. I'm going to import a bitmap. Here's my Angry Taco. I'm going to click OK. And this picture can be any picture as long as it's photoshopped so that the background is transparent. And you import this right into your project. I'm going to change the angle of my Angry Taco guy. So here is my Angry Taco. I'm going to put him in a slight angle like this. The Angry Taco. I'm going to stretch him out like that. And then I'm going to use what's called a hue, saturation, and levels, or HSL. And what this does is it's going to determine the saturation of anything that's in the specular, since we want this texture to work as its own texture. So I'm going to hit space and create a levels, and I'm going to blend this hue and saturation with my levels, which is here. Now I need to make some adjustments to this. If I increase the lighting, you'll see that the brick is becoming really bright. We don't want that. We just want enough lighting like that. If I increase this, it increases the saturation, and this increases the hue. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to blend our 2D transformation here, and now we have a really shiny Angry Taco poster. So now I need to change some of the levels here. And as you can see, our Angry Taco looks like it's painted on to our brick wall. A final effect that I gave it was I put some effect that it made it look like the paint was chipping. I believe it was grunge. So I'm going to place that in here. And I'm going to plug that into the grayscale here and into the grayscale here. And you can see that our paint is sort of chipping away. If I increase this, paint goes away, reappears. We can change the contrast. If we make the contrast really hard, it looks like it's just really hard chipping of the paint. So let's say I want this. And lastly, the balance, which determines how much of this image is showing. So let's say I'm happy with this. And there's our graffiti on our wall. Alright. So when you reach a level with your texture where it reaches satisfactory level and you're ready to import it into UDK, it's a very simple matter. First, you want to save your package. So right click and save. We're going to call this brick wall. And lastly, we're going to right click and publish. And I'm going to call this brick wall. This window will come up, this confirmation window. Just click OK. And this is where we will open the editor. So now we have UDK open, and it's just a matter of going into the content browser and creating a new package. So I'm going to call this brick example package. You would obviously call this your brick, or you would actually call this your level. This is our brick wall texture, and I'm going to place this in my materials of my package. And when that says OK, I have my brick example. I'm going to import, and I'm going to look for my published. And here's my brick wall. And when this menu pops up, make sure to create default material. Have that checked. And then click OK. And then all of our assets, our normal, our specular, our diffuse, is all in there. And the material is created by clicking that check mark. Then it's just a matter of dragging and dropping, and voila, we have our texture in UDK. So there you have it. I hope this helps you create all sorts of textures. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll catch you guys next time.